Welcome to the OMZ Property Podcast, your go-to guide for navigating the world of property investing. I am your host, and in every episode, I sit down with property investors, developers, and top industry experts to share their insights, strategies, and inspiring stories. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just getting started, join us as we explore all aspects of building wealth through property. Welcome back to another episode of the OMZ Property Podcast. Today, I'm joined by a fellow Turkish Cypriot, Mehmet Bayram, who is an estate agent. Mehmet, how you doing?
Hi, Mel. I'm good, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you so much for coming in.
No, thanks for the invite. I appreciate it.
I've had people travelling from all over the country, but you're a South Londoner, I believe. So
South-East Londoner, yeah.
Not too far for you to travel here. No. So I appreciate you coming in.
Sure.
Like to start off the podcast normally with a bit of an introduction to yourself. Mm-hmm. So if you could just tell us like who you are, what you do, and give us a bit of a background to your story, if you like.
Yeah, of course. So as you mentioned, my name is Mehmet Bayram. I'm a married man with a wife with two kids, son and daughter, and my little dog Gino. Basically, I got into the real estate business about 22 years ago, roughly. Never knew what I wanted to do, but I was really good at sales. And just started off as a trainee. I was introduced to a big corporate in Southeast London and literally just worked my way up from there. I've worked for quite a few companies here and there, Southeast London, Kent, Southwest up to Putney. But it just came to a point where I thought if I move from one place to another, I'm going to find something that's suitable. It was all the same. So I figured out I want to be based more on service. So when I watched the American TV show $1 Million Listing, and I saw how the Americans were working, I said, I love this setup. I love how they're working. They're obviously they're targeted, but they're targeted for themselves individually. So it's a self-employed model out there. And I just wanted to learn a little bit more about this. So I did partner up with a company here that's an American company, learned a few things, and since then I've set up my own business.
Amazing. What's that business called?
It's Homera Real Estate.
Homera Real Estate. Amazing. I'm going to put a link to that in the bottom of this video for anyone who wants to check you out. So grown up in Southeast London.
Yeah.
Worked in estate agents for the last 20 years in Southeast London. Yep. So you must know most of the location like the back of your hand, really, if you've been doing it that long.
Yeah.
Cool. So what sort of businesses did you work for? I know you said corporates, but are these like the likes of Countrywide and Your Moves and that sort of business, or what type of estate agents did you work for?
Yeah, so I worked for Acorns. That was my first company.
Okay, yeah.
And I've worked for Your Moves. I've worked for Leaders. That was my last company I worked as a branch manager.
Okay.
So some were independents that grew and became corporate. Some were corporate from day one. But yeah, lots of experience learned and gained.
So started off as a sales negotiator and then worked your way up, or how did it go?
My original background was actually lettings. So I started as a trainee lettings negotiator, worked all the way up to lettings manager. And then when I partnered up with someone who had an independent in Peckham, I wanted to learn a little bit of sales for him. So I was managing lettings, he was doing the sales.
I see.
We started transitioning over. And that's where I got into a bit of sales. So now I do both, and I enjoy it. It's more beneficial.
Amazing. Right, I've got a few questions for you, if you don't mind. And I suppose really just to give you honest views on some of these things, what you think. I know you've got extensive experience in what makes a good property sell. Yeah. So I think probably if I kick it off and start with what makes a good estate agent. So if someone's looking to get themselves an estate agent, how do you know someone's, because let's be frank now, right? Estate agents don't have the best rap.
No.
Yeah. If anything, I know some estate agents who, if asked what their job is, will try and make up something else and not tell someone they're an estate agent because they think they might, be frowned upon or some sort. In fact, I would say some estate agents, people have the impression that they might even be liars or cheaters, or there's all this sort of stuff out there that they might take backhanders, and some people don't trust estate agents, the general public, not everyone. But if I was to say to you, what makes a good estate agent, if someone's on the hunt to find a good one, what would your answer be to that?
A good estate agent, in my opinion, is someone who's going to listen to you focus on you entirely and not just promote the fact that we're number one, blah, 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 just selling themselves. You as sellers, you don't really care about that much. Okay, if you've got good reputation, excellent. However, you want to know that you're going to be given the best service. So the important factors, and for anyone thinking of becoming an estate agent, is always just listen. Listen, be honest, and don't be scared to actually be honest as well. Don't agree with things if you don't believe in them, because they're talking to you because they rely on your expertise. They want to hear the truth. But unfortunately, when you're target driven and it's all about targets, agents are prompt to just tell you what you want to hear just for the sake of a signature. And that's why I had to step away from corporates.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to introduce a sponsor of the channel. Trinity Finance is a directly authorised FCA regulated mortgage brokerage. Founded in 2015 with over 30 mortgage brokers, we're really well placed to help you with all your property finance needs. Starting with first-time buyers and those moving home, we also help people remortgaging residential and buy-to-let property. Alongside that, we specialise in ground-up development, commercial lending, HMO funding, mezzanine, auction, and also your traditional buy-to-let. If that's of interest, get in contact with us via email at info@trinityfinance.co.uk, or you can give us a ring on 01322 907 000. And we look forward to hearing from you.
So me and you have both got some common things. One, we're both originally, our families are Turkish Cypriot.
Yep.
Number two, we both grew up in South East London. And one of the things that's quite well known, probably across the whole of the UK, but certainly what I experienced, having worked in a corporate estate agency myself as well, about 15 odd years ago, is that lots of the estate agency models are on the basis of get a listing at any cost, right? So go in, value the property, give the spiel of, we're number one, we've sold more properties in this location, we're on Rightmove, Zoopla, all of the things that they used to sell, and we've got a buyer ready who wants to view. You've heard it all before, right? Get the property listed at all costs, we'll get it listed. And the price irrelevant, whatever the client wants to sell for, we'll list it at that price. And then a lot of them have this tactic of list it, get you tied up in this contract of 16 weeks or however long they can get you tied up, and then they then start to chip away, So it goes onto the portals, not much traction, perhaps a couple of viewings in the first week, no one makes an offer, you've kind of lost a bit of traction on potentially selling the property. And then I've even worked in offices where I've heard this happen, they'll then have every Thursday is a vendor care day where they call it vendor care, and it's like we'll call the vendors and make sure everyone's happy, but really they should change that to price reduction day, which is the day where they call to say your property's been on the market for 2 to 3 weeks and it's overpriced and we want to drop it down by 3% minimum to get the right move reduction for it to show as a new thing. Now, in my view, and there's if I won't name any names, but there's a few estate agents that are prolific for this. We'll value much more than others just to get the listing, and then we're going to hammer the price down. What are your views on that? Is that a good tactic as an estate agent, or is that bad practice?
It's really bad. Again, you're not being honest with your client. There's so many reasons why people want to move. Sometimes it could be a career change, it could be family issues, it could be family growth. So they've got their motivation. You need to help them with this rather than just getting a listing. And that's what I used to hate. It used to always be a challenge for myself because I used to always have to challenge my area managers, directors, say, I'm not going to do this. You can't be lying to people and just putting them in a contract and putting a higher price just for the sake of a signature. I actually don't offer, my contract's a 0. So it's a 0-week contract. And the reason why I give that is because it needs to be based more on trust. And if I'm not able to sell your property, because, I sell the majority of them, but not all of them do sell. And why should I have you imprisoned because I can't sell it? If I can't sell it, maybe someone else can. But I will do everything I can and I will communicate with my vendors. I'll never do the Thursday calls with them. It will just be a normal casual call. We talk on WhatsApp. but base it around their lifestyle and their personality. But yeah, I can't stand overpricing.
It's a real big corporate thing that they do, isn't it? And they're locking you in and then trying to drive the price down.
Yep.
I do feel like, for a lot of the time as an estate agent, you're sat in people's homes and, I'm thinking about, even for example, now my parents, they've lived in their property for 20 plus years.
Yep.
Prior to that, another home, but and their life is there. It's quite important to them if they were going to move home. And, they don't want to be on the market for 6 months, having all these different people coming round and thinking they're going to sell it for one price and then it turning out they actually sell it for 100 grand less.
Yeah.
And that's quite an inconvenience for people to have to go through all of that. But it seems to be quite a common thing in a estate agency, doesn't it? That it's like, I think there's probably some stats you might know better than I do, that maybe more properties or a good proportion of properties are sold by the second agent rather than the first one. Do you know any stats on that? Is that true?
It is true. And so far, I've got 100% record of doing that myself. I believe the stats were just over 60%.
What, the second agent is selling it?
Second agent sells. And the reason for that is because the seller has unfortunately listened and trust that agent. They've listened to the pricing. Hopefully they've had some sort of feedback, but they'll physically be able to see how many people have come through. They'll be able to see the sort of interest. Now, obviously agents will give any sort of feedback. Not everyone gives the honest feedback, but at least this is where I would have the opportunity to say, so what was the feedback? How many people did you have? What sort of expressions were people giving if you was in the property? And how common were the viewings coming along? And with this, then we sit down and then I'll show them comparables and just say, look, this is where it needs to be. And this is what we need to try and do to achieve you. Because if someone's willing to pay a price, they're going to pay it. It's like I always say, it's not about what I want to sell it for. It's not what you want for the property. It's what someone's willing to pay for the property. But the importance is presenting it well, pricing it accurately, and not just putting it on Rightmove and Zoopla and just waiting for the phones to ring. You need to figure out, who's this property for? Is it first-time buyer? Is it a family downsizing? And it needs to be directly to these sort of people.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because technically, if you have the right agent working for you that can give you the right advice, it can completely change your ability to sell a property and to get one price or another. I mean, I'm trying to think of some examples now. I bought a property. This is kind of maybe going to make me sound bad because it's going to make me sound like a greedy investor. But I bought a property where the property had been listed by 3 different estate agents, and it had gone from one agent. They had a sale, the buyer pulled out. Another agent, the buyer pulled out, and it was with a third agent. I think the buyer pulled out, and then I stepped in and bought this property. And essentially, all it was the seller had a spray foam insulation done in the loft.
Right.
And they were told by this company at the time that, if they put this spray foam insulation, their energy bills would be lower. And they didn't realise that lots of mortgage companies didn't like this spray foam insulation. And every time they were trying to sell it, it kept essentially becoming a problem.
Right.
They were saying, this is a hazardous material, it's not proven whether we would like to have it here. And so there's a lot of misconceptions about it. But essentially, had an estate agent gone in at the very beginning for that vendor looking to sell and said, look, you've got spray foam insulation, I'm going to educate you about it. There's lots of mortgage lenders that don't particularly like this stuff. Would you consider having it removed? It's not very expensive to have it removed, but this could be the difference of whether you sell or not. Yeah. Now, this seller went through probably 9 to 12 months of trying to sell their home to then find out that they couldn't, and they needed to sell it to me at probably a lower price than they were going to accept at the beginning. Yeah. So can you see almost like just from that, like the power of having an estate agent give valuable advice up front is invaluable. And it's just such a shame that a lot of the corporates are just, like you said, just sales driven, numbers driven. How many listings, how many sales, how many viewings? There's all these targets that they've constantly got on them. So yeah, just thought I'd share that story there because it is like, shows the power, doesn't it? Right, so Mehmet, your current business that you've got is different, right? I think we've had a bit of a chat off air about that. can you talk me through like how does a traditional estate agency business work in the UK? And the reason I'm conscious of making it specific and breaking it down is there are actually quite a few people from America that seem to listen to the podcast. Okay. Maybe they're interested in UK real estate. But so how does this traditional estate agency model work in the UK, and how does that differ to what you're trying to do in the new venture that you've got?
So here in the UK, as an agent, I was paid a basic, and then I had a commission on every property I let or sold. And obviously it's all target driven, and we're promoted at the beginning when we're offered the contract that we've got an estimated OTE subject to hitting our contracts. So this, the last one I had as a branch manager, it was 74K in a year to make after my basic and their commission.
Yeah.
Now, back then it sounded okay, but if you look at it now from what I've learned, especially with the Americans, that was pennies for the amount of work that you do.
Yeah.
So here in the UK, for all the Americans, and I've been speaking to a lot of Americans, I'm connected very highly out there, and I tell them the sort of fees that we charge and how we work. They're shocked. They're like, how do you guys keep on going like this? How are you motivated? So get back to basics. We're all paid on a basic wage. It's all target driven. Literally everything's target. Viewings, valuations, instructions, sales, lettings, everything. And then we literally just have to try and hit about 10 sales a month or 10 lets a month. Again, depends in the location and area. And this is where I saw a lot of agents coming and going because they lose motivation. They can't last on that basic wage that you get. I used to get, when I first started, I think my basic was about 10,000 a year.
Wow.
As a trainee.
Yeah.
And they gave me a company car, so that was amazing at the time.
Yeah.
But it's just the amount of work you're doing for what little you get is very hard.
Yeah.
And
do you know what? Actually, one of the things so again, I've worked in many estate agents over the years as a mortgage broker, not as an estate agent, but sat in the branches, corporate businesses, and some privately owned chains of branches in Southeast London. And one of the things that I've always noticed is that branch managers and owners of estate agents, they work really hard. Yep. They really do. It's not an easy business to be in. And negotiators and valuers and lettings, they all work equally hard. I mean, you're expected to be in the branch most time, 8 a.m. Sometimes these branches are open till 6.
Yep.
They're working Saturdays or every other Saturday. I know some estate agents, they're open on Sundays, and they're taking phone calls outside of hours, and they're doing viewings in their lunch and in the evenings. And like, when you look at the hours worked by the estate agents that I know, it's no small sum if you add it all up, what they're actually doing.
Yep.
So, in that sense, you want to be rewarded. If you're doing hard graft and you're putting in all your hours and you're sacrificing family time, you'd expect to be compensated for that, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So you've explained about commission, salary, and what sort of money you were making at that time working in a corporate business, or an estate agent. So in the UK, then, just explain like how it works in terms of like branches, locations, the fact that people lease an office and then they all work there and they cover a specific geographical area, and then compare that to kind of the other ways of working, if you can.
Yeah, of course. So if I was to set my business up as a traditional, the most case would be I'll have an office in one location, and that will be my patch. And if I wanted to expand the business, then I'll get one in this postcode, that postcode, but it would only be those patches.
And you'd have physical offices,
which is a big high turnover. I've been self-employed now 6 years, doing this myself, and it was only Saturdays that we used to get people coming into the office. That was literally the only time. And now I'm noticing a lot of offices are shut on a Saturday because they tend to just go out and do viewings, but there's no one manning the office, and that was the only days people would actually come in and say, can I register? During the week, once the smartphones came out and Rightmove was all online, Zoopla was online, everyone was just going online. They go on lunch, they're just literally swiping through, looking at new properties. They didn't need to come to an office. So with that high turnover, business rates, all the bills and paying staff, it's a big chunk of money that you're wasting. the model that I'm trying to create is based more on the American model. So we don't need an office space. You can go in the co-working places, which saves a bit of money. You've got meeting areas. But I do a lot of my business in coffee shops. People love the fact that they're not coming into an office where they've got hungry salespeople standing up. Yeah, come sit here, come sit here. They're happy that we can just go have a casual talk, have a coffee, even a meal sometimes, and we're just talking and getting to know about each other. I'm interviewing them, they're interviewing me, and then we try to put something together, and then we come to an agreement. So my model is I've got agents coming on self-employed, so they're getting a much higher commission rate. They don't need to sell 10 properties a month. They can sell maybe 10 to 15 a year and earn much more than what they were earning before as a paid estate agent.
Because the overheads are gone. There's no overheads of running these businesses. Yeah, so this is really interesting, right? But even in quite a relatively short space of time, I'm thinking back to 15 years ago, the first day I was in a corporate estate agent. And so you're right, Saturday was the day. Saturday was like the money day, we used to call it, right? So from us, we would have, as a mortgage broker, we would have all of our appointments generally were on a Saturday. And we'd normally have like back-to-back appointments, and we'd have probably some people walking in, and then the estate agent would try and refer them over to me as the mortgage broker, and I'd sit them down and try and sell a mortgage to them. And even back then, you know, they would... This whole concept, the concept of estate agency has changed even in that 15-year period, even in the UK, forgetting the advancements of the American system. But like, you'd get someone call up, sorry, scrap that. You would have applicant cards, wouldn't you? And you would look at the applicant cards and you'd say, right, this person's looking for a 3-bed house in this location, in these roads, and you'd get a property on, and then you'd go and you'd call all these people and say, right, look, here's a property, we've got it on, we think it's really suited to you. And you would actually sell that viewing, to book the viewing to that client. It was a sales job. Then you'd cross-sell conveyancing, a mortgage referral, a survey, you know, bits and pieces that you could potentially get as ancillary incomes. Nowadays, you compare that to what I see in the estate agency business, and this is no detriment or no offence meant for anyone who's an estate agent right now. But if you're a sales negotiator right now, the job normally looks a bit like the phone rings. It's a right move portal inquiry, and someone is literally asking to view a property they've seen online, and you take some basic information down and you book a viewing. And those two things, are the sales element of the role has really been stripped out quite a lot. You know, you could be a really good agent and you could take lots of details down, and you could then show them some other properties, and you could sell, but not everyone's doing that. A lot of people are just like instruction takers. They're just literally booking a viewing and going along and then saying, do you want to buy it or not? You know, so the sort of, it sounds bad, but the craft of what an estate agent was has almost sort of been replaced a little bit by this internet frenzy of just like, book something online and view it. And sometimes, you know, you could book a viewing just via email. I find that strange that they're not even going to call me and ask my position in terms of, am I cash, am I mortgage, what am I doing with the property, know a bit about me and sell something else to me. It's changed, isn't it? It really has.
I feel that it's become a lot more lazy now because everything is literally at hand. I could be sitting here and I can do a lot of business on my phone. That's what a lot of people do. But however, you still need that interaction. You need to be able to have a conversation with someone. You need to find their motivation as a buyer. Why are you looking in this area? And again, if you've got the expertise for that area and you know that they're looking for good schools and you know which schools are great, you can say, look, this house will be perfect. It's in a catchment area. However, I've got A, B, and C as well. All different pricing. I know what your maximum is, but come and have a look at it. Give them the opportunity to explore so that we can, one, learn more about them on the viewing, but you've already got that pre-temp of who these people are, what they're looking for. They appreciate it. They love it. And this is where, you know, the importance for us now as a business, as you can agree, is reviews. And the amount of reviews you get from these people, because they're actually so grateful that you listen to them and you help them find their dream home. And that's the enjoyment I get when I see what agents are doing. Some agents, there's a lot of amazing agents out there, self-employed, employed. But you do see a lot of the lazy ones where I think, well, I've got my targets for hitting 20 viewings today. I'm just going to book them in. They've requested this property. Let me book him and I might find out a little bit more information on the day. It's not the right way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the staff turnover on these corporate firms, just literally want, you know, you'll be lucky if someone stays a year or two and then they move on and do something else. So Mehmet, talk to me about the self-employed model then. So I didn't know this until I've started to kind of delve a little bit deeper, but in America, as you said, it's completely different.
Yep.
Like I know there's probably like Remax and a few other sort of big estate agency brands out there, I'm not sure, and there probably are some very large chains that own lots of branches, physical branches, I guess. In the UK, it's very much predominantly branches, specific patches, niche areas. I think the self-employed model is maybe growing, but so a question for you. If I was to go back now and say, change a career 15 years ago, I want to be a self-employed estate agent, what sort of money can I make if I'm and say I'm a good salesperson as well, so I can build relationships and I can work hard and do a good job. What sort of money could I potentially make?
It might sound a bit over the top, but you can potentially make like hundreds of thousands. Again, depending on your area, obviously. If you're doing a lot of business in central London and you're charging the good fee of 2% minimum because you're giving that sort of service, people are prepared to pay for it. You can sell 10, 15 properties and make over 100 grand. I'll say easily. What I mean by easily, I mean is easily with the sort of figures you're going to get out of it. But it is hard work. It's unfortunately, I've seen so many people that have sold the dream. I'll just sell 10 properties, you can make 100 grand if you do 2% based on 500 grand, for example. But it's not that easy. It can take up to 6 months before you start getting into that motion of, I've sold my first property, now you build up pipeline. As you know, sales, it takes a couple of months to a few months for it to complete. So you're not making commission until they actually complete, exchange and complete. Sometimes for new people going into that model, they're not aware of this as well, especially if they're just interested in coming to estate agency, real estate. So yeah, you can easily, comfortable. I know good agents that are comfortably just selling a few a year at good rate and they're making 60, 70,000 profit. And they're happy with that, spending time with the family.
Oh yeah, amazing. Especially if it gives you a great work-life balance as well, and you're not sat and tied to a desk on a Monday to Friday, 9 to 5.
That's it.
So how would one, if someone wanted to be a self-employed estate agent, how do they get the listings? Like because if you're an agent, let's think about the two models now. Let's say I'm an agent in Sidcup. Okay, I'm on the high street. I pay my money to Rightmove and Zoopla, and I've got my office and I've got my sign up and I've got an A board out the front. Yeah, and I'll go and I'll buy Rightmove credits. Is that what it is?
That's
I think.
Right.
And then I'll sort of, every time someone says they want a property valued, I might be one of 3 or 4 agents that has the chance of going around. And then there's like touting and all that sort of stuff that you might knock on doors on other boards and bits and pieces to get listings on. But I'm probably just going to stay within Sidcup. I might venture into, I don't know, Welling, Bexley, some other areas around Sidcup, but likelihood is I'm just going to be, that's the patch. So if someone comes in, they're self-employed now, and the key thing if you're self-employed is to get listings, because you need to sell them to get the money coming in 3 to 6 months down the line. What is the strategy to get people to sell to you, sell through you even?
So the strategy is like what you just said. Just focus on your area that you know. You've either grown up there or you've lived there the last few years, you know the area. So become part of the community, get involved, speak to local business owners and get your face out there. So door knocking is a key thing. Looking at properties that are struggling to sell, door knocking on those, put leaflets through the door. But you just need to speak. But social media is a big thing. So me, myself, I don't pay for the extra credits on Rightmove or Zoopla to be a valuation agent.
It's quite expensive, I believe, isn't it?
It's very expensive. I'd rather invest some of that money into social media and just get my presence out there, do videos, do things like what we're doing today. But like I said, it's all about community. So if you're part of Sidcup, get involved with your community a lot more. Let them know who you are.
So it's your personal brand, which is the key, yeah?
Yeah.
And then let's say you've established some personal brand, you're doing the door knocking, and then you've created all this, let's say you've got some listings, right? You're now starting to sell the listings. With a traditional estate agent, they would have a valuer, a negotiator, a progressor, a tea lady, all the bits and pieces, a cleaner, on a Sunday to come and clean the office. Is this a model you can do on your own? Is it scalable? Like, how does it compare to... I know an estate agent that's got 10 staff members in it. They've got 2 valuers, 3 negotiators, 2 progressors, some lettings people, and it's mental in the branch. It's constant. The phones are ringing. How does that compare to the self-employed model? And like, what support do you have, I suppose?
So the support I've got is I've partnered with a company that does sales progressing, and that's all they focus on. And they've got the same ethos and background as me as well. She was a sales progressor, decided to leave the country, but wanted to continue doing it. So she set that up. Great partnership idea. So you find people that are similar to you, and you do need to outsource certain departments, like you said. My last office as branch manager, I was managing at least 11 staff members, from lettings to sales to managers. So it's crazy. And now all of a sudden it's just myself. My wife's my property manager. I've got VA that does some admin for me.
I'm going to plug your wife now quickly, actually. I'm not one to constantly promote other people, but Theresa, I don't know if she's still doing this, Mehmet, actually, but she's done quite a lot of inventories for me on my HMOs.
Yep.
And I can't remember how I first got her to help me, but she's just absolutely brilliant. Like, she just came in, took all the headache away from me, does the inventories, and it's just like seamless from start to finish.
Yep.
And it works perfectly on all the HMOs. And I believe she does like check-ins and check-outs and all that sort of stuff as well, doesn't she? So if someone is looking for someone in South East London, Kent, would they be able to get in touch with Theresa if she's just still doing that? Or I'm not sure what her main focus is within your business now, but
so she's now expanded her business, and now it's called Neutral Property Group. She does her inventories, property inspections still, and now she actually does property management.
It's really good value as well. Like,
Definitely.
I'm just very happy with it. You know, when sometimes you go to companies and things cost you an arm and a leg. It was affordable and like a big stress off me to not have to do that sort of stuff myself. So give us her details if you can. I'll put them in the description for anyone listening, watching, that may look to have inventories or property management and stuff like that. If they're letting property out, they can get in touch with you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry,
I'll be happy with that.
I've interrupted your flow there. Very sorry, but it just came into my mind because I remember how brilliant she was.
So just in comparison to how it was in the office and how it is now. So at the beginning, you do most of the stuff yourself. I'll be honest, I wouldn't advise it, but me, I'm very articulate with how I do things. I find it hard to dictate and pass over to other people. However, as a business grows, you have to be able to find other people to work with. Usually, as a self-employed agent, you would want to find an administrator. It could be virtual assistant, or if you know someone local, part-time, just pay someone to help you with your admin. It's so important for you to be able to grow the business, and then you slowly start expanding as the business grows. So it works with demand.
Yeah. So is your focus mainly lettings, or is it also mainly sales, or is it both? What's the main focus for you?
So out of 22 years, I would say I've done lettings for 15 years. So that's what I grew up on. But mainly I've been doing more sales recently. However, obviously I do still do a lot of lettings, and now Theresa does all the management, so she's taken that headache away from me.
Oh yeah, good.
But no, we do everything, and we also offer like a concierge service. So if I work with investors who are looking for certain properties, so I don't like to say I'm a sourcer because we get so many people saying they're sources. So we act as a concierge service where we can go out and find properties for you specifically. We work with other agents as well. So we either do split commissions or we charge our buyers a finder's fee. We offer this service. We've got partners nationwide and globally as well. So it's basically anything property, and we've got the right partners. So obviously, you know who we work with for mortgages, Trinity Finance. We've got great solicitors that we partnered with, contract. We've got everyone, whatever you need, we can help you with.
Have you managed to sell a property in Northern Cyprus yet?
No, but I'm just about to partner up with a developer.
Oh, yeah. That's an interesting market, I tell you, over there. It's like the wild, wild west, isn't it?
Lots of politics.
Lots of politics and lots of people losing money, I hear, from all sorts of dodgy developers and not getting your title deeds registered and all that sort of stuff. So, be warned. Over here, we seem to have a very safe system, don't we? Land registry, you know what you're buying, you get a title number and it's all safe and secure. Yeah. So, I know that you are in a few WhatsApp groups that I'm in as well with lots of other property developers.
Yep.
Specifically like down to South London and a few of those ones where there's kind of lots of property investors, developers, and you quite regularly chip in with bits of advice. Sometimes really like things that people just haven't thought about, I guess.
Yep.
Like they've just kind of fundamentally done something wrong, or they need to stage a property a bit better or stuff like that. So like, I suppose, how much of your time going out there seeing people is actually giving them advice to change things, and how much of it is like, actually, this property's perfect, I'm just going to list it and sell it straight away? What do you spend most of your time doing really day to day?
I always like to offer support and advice and guidance. That's my main thing. That's what I really love and enjoy. So I do go to the properties and have a look. I do give them advice. Sometimes it's someone who's on with another agent and they're struggling to sell and they can't seem to understand why. And they'll say to me, Mehmet, can you just give me a bit of advice? Why do you think they can't sell my property? So I would look at it and I'll give them tips. Sometimes it could be, look, it's empty. Some people can't be creative enough just looking online. It's really quick now. It's like a dating site. You left, right, whatever it is, you're sweeping through quickly. So it needs to attract people. So, it's virtual staging. I know you can't afford to buy furniture and furnish it. Do some virtual staging that will attract people as well. So it's all about just looking at what I believe will help them and just getting a bit of understanding from the client as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So someone now wants to list a property for sale. Okay, they've decided that they're going to go for someone like you, who's motivated because ultimately you're going to get the lion's share of the commission.
Yep.
And this other estate agency on the high street who's going to charge a similar commission, the individual is going to earn a really small amount of that because of all of the overheads of the business. So you've got someone who's motivated to sell it. Question for you, which is probably going to be one that's quite irritating and annoying, and I would imagine lots of sellers ask you this question as well. But should the person do fixed price, offers in excess of, or a guide price? What would your recommendation be?
Again, it depends on what your competition is, a sort of area, and what sort of demand you're getting. Sometimes you do need to be a bit more creative, so you're better off doing a guide price. I have always done this from the day I became a valuer and worked up to management. If I came to your house now and valued it, I'll give you what I think the top price should be that you could potentially achieve, realistic price, and worst case scenario. So you're always getting 3 different prices from me.
And how are you finding that out? Just break that down for us. For anyone who doesn't know, how do you determine what figure you're going to put to the property?
Yeah, of course. So we obviously get as much information of that particular property, and we should know the area and property styles anyway. We, as agents that use Rightmove and Zoopla, there's a back office sort of tool that you can use. So Rightmove Pro, Zoopla Pro, where they give you tools there to be able to value properties as well as look at data. So it shows you the amount of people looking in that road at those style houses. So it could be a flat, semi-detached, terrace and detached, and it's telling you the sort of price ranges they're looking for. So we have a look at those. We look at properties, how quickly they're selling at certain prices that are very similar to that property as well. And what the slow movers are. So if for example, because one thing I want to make clear is we're not valuers. That's a surveyor's job. We have to use what I'm trying to explain now to give you a rough point of this is what it should sell for. So just looking at slow movers, lots of data with the potential buyers looking in that area, the sort of drive, and a few other tools that we use as well as agents. We basically try to say, look, as you can see, A, B, and C, I think we need to be looking at that sort of price as well. But what I like to do is usually do a guide price. And again, this is where I love my job so much, is I like to work for it. Not let's put it up and let's negotiate it down. Anyone can do that. You don't. That's basically the house selling itself. I like to go down a little bit lower. So if there's 4 properties within a catchment area that are all similar prices and similar style properties to you, let's go a little bit lower. Because if they're slowly selling, then someone's willing to pay 875, for example. Let's put it down a guide price of 850 to 875. Why? They're going to offer us less than 850. No, they're not. Because you need to clearly advertise what you're trying to sell it for and leave it to me to make sure I know they can afford over 850, and they're prepared to come in and view it if they're willing to go higher and not lower. So you attract more people through the door, and then it gives you a lot more attraction, more opportunity to start negotiating up and getting people to give them best and final offer.
That's just good marketing, isn't it? To do it that way. I mean, sometimes, and there's like bands, isn't there? Price bands where people are searching. If you like 925 or 875, there might be different bands at which people are searching on Rightmove. It's interesting actually, because I don't know, I think I've spoke to you about this before, but I've done quite a lot in the auction space. It's kind of a bit of an obsession. I had like buying and selling properties at auction for quite a while, and the kind of tactic for when people sell properties at auction is very it's not the same as selling a property via the open market. The whole idea is price something extremely low most of the time, an unrealistic price which feels to anyone looking at it the biggest bargain in the world that you might get, on the basis that you create a frenzy of people that all start to bid against each other to create this property that may sell for even more than it might sell on the open market for. And that only works for certain properties, you know, maybe distressed assets, probate, problem properties and that type of stuff. You see a lot of that in the auctions. Whereas on the open market, you know, you might be dealing with a family that are living in a property and have lived there for a long time, and they want to buy on, and then you've got chains. And so, you know, trying to convince them to market their property for 100 grand less than it should be on the basis you might create a frenzy, it's going to be almost impossible to convince a seller to actually go ahead and do that. But the guide price is, it almost touches on that slightly, doesn't it? Because it's sort of, you're not misleading anyone, but you're saying, look, this is the absolute minimum that we're starting it at. And you're creating because you need to get people through the door, don't you? You get them through the door, they see it, they feel it, they touch it, they know, could they see themselves here? If you can't get them through the door, you're not going to sell anything, are you? And that's the key thing when doing this. So I think if I was going back and was thinking about the career as an estate agent, the whole sat in an office, putting all them hours in, doing that big shift, and then perhaps being rewarded, but not being rewarded what you should be if you were earning 30, 40K as an estate agent and you wanted more. The self-employed model could be the right option for some people. You would have to be the right type of person.
Definitely.
Because self-employed is not for everyone, right? No. Some people, they do need that stability and they want the corporate job with the pension and the holiday, and they perhaps aren't at that stage yet. Maybe they'll never be self-employed, you know, that's completely normal. But for someone who says, no, actually, I feel like this could be a career, an estate agent, where I could learn the sales skills, the ability to value, to build rapport, and then to give amazing customer satisfaction, to deliver us, and to know the house buying process from start to finish, including all of the conveyancing and the intricacies. And then I would imagine you're quite often trying to keep deals together, that surveys are happening, and then this has come out that you didn't know about, and there's all of that sort of stuff as well. Do you think it's a career people should go into? Is it something you'd recommend for someone to be an estate agent?
Yeah, look, it's not for everyone, and it's not easy, not a self-employed model. But as long as you've got the drive and passion for helping people, selling, wanting to make money, and the beauty of this is, I'm not telling you how much you're going to earn. You tell me how much you're going to earn. This is the possibility. It's not got a full stop at the end of it. You can say, well, I want to earn 50K. You might get that done within 4 months. You think, okay, let's double this and go on to the next one. It's just that big buzz.
Yeah. So this American model, that, you know, they're real estate agents. They're not estate agents, or they're realtors. Is that what they call themselves out there? Seem to be, there's quite a few of them on social media that are kind of getting big names. I won't name the people, and you know, they're talking about, I'm £1 million agent on my own. I'm a single person, work for myself, and I sell £1 million worth of property. And I know obviously in America, there probably are some very high net worth locations where you might sell 1 or 2 properties or 10 properties, like you said, and all of a sudden you can bring in £1 million worth of revenue. But do you think that, is it realistic that anyone who's self-employed could ever make that sort of money in the UK? Is there anyone doing that over here?
There's agents doing it. There's a development that I'm working with, as well as many other agents, self-employed and office-based agents, where I can tell you now, if I sell the penthouse, I can make 500 grand.
Wow.
So it is possible. again, it's very hard. You need to be able to find that buyer. It's not about putting it on Rightmove. It's about being creative, talking to people, and being. You need to find a top end millionaire. You know, it's not just any buyer.
Yeah, that's a quite an interesting space. I think whoever's working in that real high net worth space, you know, they're probably like network. I would imagine they're networking at yacht clubs and
exactly
places that are selling private jets and all the kind of real extravagant places where they might find someone with a lot of money. But for the average estate agent who's just selling standard houses, is it realistic if they were very good that they could make hundreds of thousands, or do you think you're capped? What's the maximum? Do you think you could, self-employed agent, you're amazing at your job, what's the maximum you could probably make?
Again, it's hard to say a maximum because it depends how much sacrifice you put in, the hours, the days that you do this. But if, for example, you're looking in like the Mayfairs where you can get properties up to from 2 million up to 20 million to 50 million, in those areas, those sellers are prepared to pay you 2 to 2.5%. So if you think about that, that's already a big number, just selling one property.
And what would so if you're outside of those prime central London areas and you're operating in Kent, southeast London, what's the average listing fee? So
average, you're looking at, some agents go down to 1% or 0.75%, which I would definitely not advise. My fee, if you're happy for me to say this, is a 1.5. The lowest I'll go is 1.25. But there will need to be certain agreements there for this. So 1.5%, if you're selling something for 1 million, that's not a bad commission at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you do for that? You do all the viewings, you list it, you get photos, floor plans. Like, talk me through exactly what you would do.
Yeah. So with myself, I would potentially help them stage the property. So I've got contacts for this as well. It might be virtual staging, or it might be a professional staging where they have to invest a bit more money into. I get professional photos done, professional floor plan, and a video walkthrough. And some properties I'll get a drone. Again, it depends on the area if you think it's worth it, but it always has to be professional. And I'll get 1 or 2 different marketing teams that come out specifically to do this for us. It's just preparing the property as well as you can and being there, holding their hand from day one all the way to the end. And you need to have that consistency with them from the start to finish.
Mehmet, just a couple of other things to talk to you about. I don't know whether this is of interest, but I've always found the UK property market, just in general, just to be a bit strange. You know, it's very archaic. Like the fact that it takes 3 to 6 months to be able to buy a property for the average Joe, it just seems crazy in a modern day society. And when you compare it to some other countries, there are places where in other countries the seller and the buyer goes to a particular location with a solicitor and they all sign on that day, and you can buy a property in the same day in some other countries. The UK is very different. There's lots of toing and throwing with different solicitors. Sometimes these solicitors still send stuff via pigeon rather than email, and it just drags on and on and on over here. If you compare it to, say, Scotland, now Scotland have got a slightly different system up there because they have this thing called a home report. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's essentially where you've got like a valuer who values a property up front, and then they get issued this report in which someone can come along and buy the property, and the mortgage lender will use that report rather than having a survey. So it kind of speeds the process up a little bit. And interestingly, in Scotland, there are lots of estate agents, but they tend to be sort of conveyancing or solicitors that are also estate agents. It's like a hybrid thing. And so in Scotland, the whole gazumping thing doesn't really happen because you exchange quite early on, I believe. You probably know more than I do on that. But what do you, like, in general, what do you think about how much friction there is to actually buy a property in the UK? Like, do you think it needs an overhaul, I suppose?
It does. It's, you know, a lot of people still say we're way set back to how it used to be about 100 years ago. Again, I can't compare that, but you know, again, working closely with American agents, they're in shock when we tell them how long it actually takes to exchange. Never mind complete, it could take 2 to 3 months to exchange, and they're like, but the seller or the buyer can come out anytime then. Exactly. So, you know, we need to be able to exchange, I think, at a very, very early stage. It just needs to be a subject to, but let's get the exchange done So then we know we've got a commitment on both ends, and then work towards getting the completion done. I think we need to become a little bit more involved in the conveyancing like the Americans do. They literally take it from sell to exchange, and then they do most of the conveyancing themselves with a solicitor out there, and they can complete in a month or even less.
Yeah, I mean, that would be brilliant, wouldn't it? If you could be able to buy a property here in a month. It's just some of the transactions. I mean, I've got a property that I bought, nearly took me nearly close to a year, toing and froing, and there was grant of probate involved, and it really did take some time. But yeah, like this conveyancing process, so you sort of like, just trying to think probably of the average conveyancing process to buy a house in the UK. Not all of them are like this, but this is probably me exaggerating a little bit. You find a solicitor you want to use, they email you some forms, right? You've got to print these forms off because you can't sign them online. You've got to get a pen and fill it all in. And then you've got to go to the solicitor's office with your ID and your proof of address and meet the solicitor. Then the solicitor opens a file, okay? And then they want some money from you, a couple of £100 probably, to start opening the file. That might take a week or two. Yeah. You then, the solicitor will do something called searches. So they're going to apply to the local authority for the searches or the search pack. You probably know that can be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, depends on the local authority, doesn't it? So you've got a delay just to get the searches. During that time, not much really happens, does it? You're applying for a mortgage, but nothing really happens in that time. Once that's done, you're then in the realms of inquiries. Now, why they couldn't do that much earlier on, because they're waiting for the search pack most of the time. But these inquiries, which is essentially the buyer's solicitor asking the seller's solicitor questions, done via email or fax if they're really old school, they'll go back and forward, and that can take several weeks. And you just sort of think, why can't you just speed that all up and get it done? It does just really drag on, doesn't it?
It does.
And then by the time you get to exchange, and you're transferring a deposit, and then you're drawing money down from a lender and completion, I just think, like, surely in this digital age, we could speed this whole thing up somehow and make it, because there's so much friction. And in that time, you think the buyer can change their mind at any point. Incredible, really, isn't it?
It is. It is. And it does happen because, all of a sudden interest rates come down. So now they may want to reapply for a mortgage, and they think, well, actually, I can get a little bit more. I might actually look for another property, or the interest rates have gone up. And now they think, actually, I can't afford this property no more because it's taken so long. I'm sure you guys saw it as well with the mortgages, with the first-time buyers trying to get in there before the stamp duty hike from 1st of April. It was just crazy. So There's talks, I believe, that the government are looking to try to digitise a lot of things like land registries and other things within the councils. So then you should be able to download things a lot more quicker.
I believe it when I see it, Mehmet, I think.
Exactly.
Knowing what happens in this country, but that's a story for another day, I think.
Yeah.
Mehmet, it's been amazing getting to know you. I'm sure everyone's really going to have picked up a few things here. If you're thinking of buying and selling properties, you'll have got hopefully a bit of an overview and an insight into how a estate agency works. I'll share all the details, like I said, in the notes for anyone who wants to get in contact with you. I normally like to finish, if possible, on a recommendation from you, if you can. So this could be a book that you've read that may have been something that inspired you, or a podcast that you might have listened to that you felt was good, or even a website or something. Anything that you think could be valuable to the people listening or watching. Have you got anything you'd like to share on that?
For anyone looking or is in real estate or estate agency, I think if you look at a book from a top agent out in New York, who I work with quite closely, his name's Ryan Serhant. Part of $1 Million Listing, and now owning Manhattan, his own show on Netflix. He's got 3 books, Sell It Like Serhant, Brand It Like Serhant. I can't remember the third one, so sorry, Ryan, if you're watching. But if you look at these, you get so much insight from him. He's on YouTube as well. There's so much insight. You learn a lot from this person. And if you want to become a better agent, definitely read those books and look him up on
Amazing.
YouTube.
I'll share the details for anyone, again, in the show notes if anyone wants to go and check him out. Amazing. Thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you for having me.
I'm sure we'll see each other again soon.
Definitely.
Thank you for watching, listening, and we'll see you at the next episode.